I'm going to record this for you too, so you can go back and review if you have to. How's
Oh,
that, Paul?
I like that. So I want to hit got it. Okay.
Okay. All right. So in this detail area, the default is usually set to 25. You don't want to do that. There's only one place you want to sharpen, and based on my experience and what the pros do, you don't want to sharpen at this stage. So
Okay.
make sure you change the default using these three buttons here by taking that all the way down to the bottom. And then I also make default this and this, just because I prefer to do it myself because every photo is different. So to reiterate what I did before is I increased noise reduction a little bit. I increased color noise reduction a lot because it really doesn't affect edges. Noise reduction does. And by the way, you can buy plugins for noise reduction that cost a lot of money. Most pros think that this is the best noise and the only noise reduction you need. But you better
Okay.
be zoomed in at 100% when you're looking at detail.
Okay.
Now, something else I can notice here is you have fringing. This happens, it can happen, depends on the lens, but more often affected by the lighting. So then you go down to optics. Optics is where you can delete your fringing. Fringing is almost always in green or purple, or shades thereof.
What
Sometimes
is
it's
what is
blue.
this? What is this noun? Fringing?
Yeah, do you see this on the
Oh yeah,
screen?
I see it, but I just wasn't familiar with the term.
Yeah, it's called fringing.
Okay.
And what I'm about to show you is how to defringe and take care of this. So the first thing I'm going to do is move because this is green, right?
Yep.
I'm
Right.
going to move my green slider to the right. And I only need it a little bit, and it's gone. Now, sometimes you have to add more green gamut to get it to delete, or more blue, or in the case of purple fringing, more orange or more blue to get rid of it. But here there's a little bit of green there, so I might go a little bit more. But you don't want to
Okay.
go too far.
All
So
right.
there, it's pretty well gone. So any green that was on this picture is now gone. Now, the
Okay.
reason you want to go too far is if you actually have green in the image, it can start to affect that, and you don't want to do that. You're just trying to take care enough to get rid of the fringe areas, the edges. Now I'm going to go back to the basic controllers.
Okay.
Or actually, I'm going to go to Color Mixer. This is how you can change all the colors. And as I was saying earlier, there tends to be blues in the sky unless it's morning or night. In this case, there's bound to be some blue pixels in here. So what I'm doing first is darkening the blue pixels to give a
Ooh.
more dramatic look to the sky.
Mhm.
And then this one doesn't have cyans, but if I had cyans, I would adjust those. Here I'm going to play with the aquas a little bit to give definition. It opens up this white area a little bit more to give it balance and layers. And then this is just something I do is I always go into blues, and I prefer a sky that is not red or purple. I prefer one that's got a hint of green in it. And I take it to a maximum of a -9. I never go over -9. And it just makes I think, a more dramatic sky, and a more, I don't know if I want to say unique. It's not unique. It just gives life to the sky. So this is as far as I'm going to go in this stage. So I'm going to open it. Now I don't want to do anything else for now. I want to save it. And I want to save it as a 16-bit file, which is TIFF for me. You can also use a PSD Photoshop file, or a Adobe what is it? There's an Adobe version of this too. It's like DWG or something. I don't see it here,
Okay.
but I save it as a TIFF file just to keep it simple. And I'll call this one, this is by nomenclature, edited -1.
Okay. And where are you saving it to?
just my standard folder. This is now being saved to the download folder where I received it. Wherever you want, you can say it's often best to be in your desktop. You need to know where to grab it next when you need
Okay.
it. Because what we're about to do now is go open that same file again, which is 5929. This is what we opened before, right?
Uh-huh.
So now I'm going to, well, let's see. Typically, I would reset the default, but I'm not going to do that here because I can see there's still definition in the shadows here, where I don't think I have to do that. Now I'm going to play a little bit with the color, and I'm going to see what color works best.
Okay, I'll make some notes here. I want to ask you to pause for just a moment.
Sure.
You had an image
Yep.
and you saved it as a TIFF file and you
Correct.
saved it to wherever I would, let's say, for example, put it on my desktop.
Yeah, because you're only
Okay,
going to need that file temporarily.
okay. So now, did you close that image?
No, because we're going to
Okay.
use it for
Okay.
our
So when
third
you
step.
reopened an image, are there two layers or two images out there?
No, your raw file, you never want to manipulate your raw file. Your raw file, you should keep the files that come out of your camera pure and
Okay.
never change. Okay, so you
I'm not
never see
questioning that, but what I'm questioning is what did you open the second time?
the same raw file.
Okay.
Now, see what happens when you make adjustments to a raw file in Adobe Raw. It keeps the change to the file, but you haven't. It's a writer. It's a XMP file that sits on top of the file, literally. But the underlying raw image hasn't been manipulated. It's still there. So at any time, I can go in here and click reset to default, and the
Okay.
underlying image that came straight out of the camera is still there.
Okay.
So in fact, I'll just do it because we're talking about it. So we're back to the original image.
Okay.
Now I can go back to where we were.
Okay. Very good.
Okay. Now I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna manipulate color. I probably should have manipulated color a little bit already when I had the sky where it was, but it doesn't matter because given the nature of the sky. But I'm gonna do it here. And I like Adobe Landscape. It makes the colors a little more contrasty. And then I'm gonna check the white balance. Um, and I'm just gonna try these on for size to see what I like. And I can tell already I'm not gonna like any of them. So I'm going back to as shot. Your camera knew best in this situation. Now I'm going to open up the exposure on it. And I'm watching my histogram while I'm doing this because I don't want to cut off any data. And now I'm exposing using Ansel Adams' zone system for only the foreground. I don't care what happens in the sky. I'm going to go to 100%. I'm going to play a little bit with the clarity slider, just a little bit to sharpen up. This kind of, it doesn't really sharpen it, but it adds definition to your item to make it look sharper to a viewer.
Okay.
And then I'm going to look at blacks. And then I'm going to take down the highlights so these white areas don't seem as white. Or my whites. I want them to be a little more gray.
Okay.
And then I'm going to go into color mixer. And now I want to worry about these oranges. I want to play with the oranges. So I'm going to adjust this slider a little bit. I'm going to open up the oranges a little bit more. I'm going to saturate the oranges just a little bit more. And I'm going to maybe push them a little more to the red side so they don't look as old. Before I leave here, I'm going to go check for, see,
Fringing.
now we have purple fringing.
Ooh.
See that there?
Yeah, I
So
do.
now we're going to go to optics. I'm going to move my purple slider until that's gone. And I see a little green here. Let me, I don't see green anywhere else, but there is a little bit of green there. It's more like a blue. So I'm going to, that's too much.
Now, I think I heard you earlier say that we're not going to worry about sharpening, not yet, because
Correct.
obviously this image could use some sharpening, but we're not going to do that until a later time. Do I have that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I hit done instead of open, so I'm going back and grabbing the file again. I don't sharpen an image until I know how it's going to be used. You sharpen an image based on what its output is going to be, not what you have in front of you. Now, I make exceptions to that sometimes because I'm excited to see what it looks like sharpened. But the way you sharpen it for the web, for example, is different than how you sharpen it for a print or anything that needs to be printed. You
Tell me
typically would
how.
sharpen something for print a wee bit more than you would for the web.
Okay.
And so I leave that as the last possible step I do to an image. And I'll show you what I do here before I'm done. So you'll see how I sharpen an image. But that's where we are now. So now I'm going to open this up. So we have two files. We have the one here we expose for the foreground, and we have the one where we expose for the sky. So now I'm
Okay.
going to grab the sky, and I'm going to create a layer here and paste it here. And I'm going to grab, with my selection tool, the sky.
Okay. Now when I interrupt for a minute, you're in Lightroom.
No, Photoshop.
Okay, but how did you get from Lightroom to Photoshop to
That
create two
wasn't
different layers?
Photoshop. That was Adobe Camera Raw. You use
Adobe Camera Raw and Lightroom to me are the same thing.
well. It's not. Um,
They look the same.
they use similar. How should we say? They use a similar engine, but they're not the same.
Okay.
So you just need to what that is. That is quite literally called. Its literal name is Adobe Camera Raw. So when it's opened in Lightroom, it's still Adobe Camera Raw.
Okay.
Okay. So now what I just did was I highlighted the sky, right?
Okay.
Now I'm going to inverse it, select inverse, which is the opposite of the pixels I selected, and I'm going to hit delete. Edit, cut. No, I'm on the wrong one. Hold on. I need to go up here and grab this one again.
And what selection tool are you using? Just the ants?
I use the magic wand to, I mean,
Okay.
it depends what you're doing, but for something like this, it doesn't have to be precise
Very good.
because the edges, now I see somewhere here where I want to clean it up a little bit. Oops.
Wrong way. There you go.
It makes it easier to clean up
Are
later.
you using a Wacom? A
No,
tablet?
people swear by them, and I've practiced with them, but they say the difference is like using a pen with a potato on the end versus. I'm sorry, I tell you what I do use. I have very large hands. Believe it or not, my mouse is quite small because
Okay.
I find with the larger mice, it's harder to be precise. But big hands, small mouse, I have a very easy time being precise with my mouse.
Okay.
So that and experience, I assume. But so now I'm going to delete these pixels. Edit. Well, I'm gonna soften the edge just a bit. Um, Select. I don't always do this, but here it probably makes a little sense. So I'm just going to feather the ends of this a little bit. And then I'm going to go select, edit, cut. And those pixels are taken away.
All right.
So now this is where it was before. Here we have well, it's not where we were before. We'll show that at the end. But you can see how I blended the sky that we edited to the foreground. And now I'm going to look here along the edges to see if there's anything that looks weird through the mating of the two layers. And I don't see anything. There is some more fringing here that we can afford to get rid of. And I'll show you a different way for getting rid of that. I'm going to merge the two together. Now, how do you get rid of this? I'm worried that by using I'm going to try filter Adobe Camera Raw. You can still use the raw palette to address this while you're in Photoshop. So I'm going to try to see if this works. I don't think it's going to. Actually, it might work. It did. Okay, I was worried about what might affect other parts of the image, but it didn't. Okay. Now, image, canvas size, try to give it just a little bit more breathing room. I don't know if this is going to work, but I'm going to try it. I'm going to grab the top part of the image where the white is and just a little bit of the sky.
Okay.
Edit, fill, content aware, and click OK. And I added more sky. And then I'm going to go to the bottom, simply because this is the easiest. Edit, fill, content aware, OK.
Okay, now let me back you up here. Now what you did was you just used like the rectangular selection right there for that to determine. Okay, and then you went to edit, fill, content aware.
Correct.
Okay.
And then the computer engine will use artificial intelligence to determine what pixels would look best if you need to fill the white area. Now I tried doing it here and it did a bad job, so I'm going to go over here instead. And I'm going to grab to about there. I just don't think it's going to do a good job there. So what I do is I grab, the reason I can get away with this is it's a relatively simple foreground and background. So I'm going to feather it again, the edge, and this is more based on instinct and experience. Then I click OK, and I hit Control J, which copies this thing that I just copied. So it's sitting there,
new layer.
but I need to go in transform. I need to flip horizontal, so it's opposite of where we were. I'm going to delete the white line that got copied. Select, deselect.
Okay, no, wait a minute, Mr. Sleight of Hand. How did you do that again? How did you get rid of the line, the white line?
I selected it,
Yeah.
and I just hit delete, and it deletes it.
I'm glad you're copying this so I can see it again.
Now, that didn't do as good a job as I thought it would do, so we're going to try this way.
Okay, as far as I'm concerned, while we're doing this thing today, I am picking up a great deal of new stuff. And from my point of view, we ain't building a piano. So we don't have to have this thing get ready for Vogue by nightfall. So if you want to just go ahead and proceed, but just showing me that
well, yeah, that's okay. But these are some of the best things you can do to improve an image. I'm not doing that. I mean, I'd spend even more time, frankly. Some of my images take days to edit.
Okay.
That's rare anymore, but it used to. So don't worry, I'm okay. I mean, I'm not
Okay.
going to be here all night. I know you have other things to do, but I'm going to, give you the basics as much as I can.
Well, I'm fascinated so far with these things about fringing and defringing and the use of the color mixer and so on. Those are
Well,
things that I haven't done.
what's that?
Although I'm picking up terms and techniques that I have not before
Well, you want
even
to know what's a
imagined.
sad thing? I learned most of this through an online forum called dpreview.com. And then it got bought out by Amazon. And then I just learned about 3 weeks ago they're closing it down.
Oh,
This was an online chat board, kind of community where photographers shared techniques and all that other jazz. Now, granted, I haven't used it much in the last 5, 6, 7, 10 years, but I would always use it as a resource to go back to see what other photographers were doing sometimes.
good
And they're
idea.
closing it down, and I think it's already gone for good. So it's sad that all that knowledge was lost forever. So um, I learned a lot of this stuff on that board, and I'm just disappointed that other photographers aren't going to be able to do the same. So I was able to add some more room there. I don't know if this
Yes.
is going to work again, but I'm going to try.
Hey,
Select and select. I don't. It didn't do a good job, but that's okay for now. So now I'm going to crop it.
stop me for this moment. What are you using to zoom in and to zoom out as quickly?
My scroll bar. Oh no, the magnifying glass here. When you have the magnifying glass, if
Yeah,
you click and hold down the left key, you zoom in. If you keep it held, then if you go to the left,
I got it.
yeah,
See,
to the
I had
right,
not seen it before. Okay, so
to the right, zoom
I
in.
know the magnifying keys, but now what I just use is the left and the right, um, the parentheses.
No, I use my mouse in and out.
Okay,
So try that sometime
okay,
with your mouse. Hold your left key down using the magnifying glass, and you can go back and forth.
okay.
Okay. Now I'm going to crop this. I crop everything at 2x3s. All my prints are almost everything. There are some exceptions for like panorama shots and some other stuff. Uh, Now I'm going to orient. I always orient this. The grid there that comes up. I always use a leading line there to determine what's straight.
Yeah,
Here the horizon is dissimilar than it is here, so I can't use the horizon very well. So I use the nearest vertical line to determine what's straight. So I use this as a reference. Okay,
okay,
and then I'll adjust this a little bit up and down using my arrow keys so I get somewhere I like. Select, deselect, and I'm going to grab my spot healing brush and click this little white area in the corner. And there we are. Now, we're not done.
whoa, whoa, whoa. What was that little brush that you used to remove the thing in the corner?
Spot healing brush right here.
Okay, got it. Okay,
Spot healing brush.
got it.
Okay. Now I'm going to collapse these for now. We haven't perfectly exposed it just yet. Now that we've combined the sky into here, I'm going to go to my adjustments and I'm going to grab my levels adjustment layer.
All right.
You get this mountain of data here. Now the old method is just to move this over to the right, but it's imprecise. Okay. There's a trick that most people don't know that's buried deep within Photoshop. If you hold down your Alt key and then click Auto,
I don't have an Alt key.
you have an Options key.
Okay,
Hold down your Options key and click on Auto.
okay,
You'll get this little window that'll pop up. Don't click this tick box until the end. It's seldom useful, but go and click through these different layers. And you'll find one that you like better than the rest. And part of that is based on preference. Here,
Okay.
the first one works well, and then I'm going to toggle it between the two
Okay.
settings. I don't like it as, I generally like a warm image, but here the stormy sky takes away from that. So I take it to that level, and I like that exposure. That exposure works nice. And then I will do a contrast adjustments layer. Not because it necessarily needs it, but I want to see what the computer sees. So I'll hold down my, so here I'll just hit auto. There's no holding down. And it will tell you, the computer is going to tell you that it needs 21% more brightness, which is why this is in part blown out. And it needs 10%, a 10-degree more contrast. I disagree with the brightness. That's not the kind of picture we're making here. We want it to be a little sad, I think, and somber, at least in my mind. And as far as contrast, yeah, I kind of agree. The contrast helps. So I take care of that. And then I do another adjustments layer. I see my histogram is perfectly between these two ends. So we're good. So I delete that. Now the last thing I want to do is consider this shadowed area. And I'm going to grab the shadow area. And I'm going to deselect the shingles. And I don't even know what I'm going to do here yet, but I do know this is part of a different zone than this, in the foreground. So I'm going to, again, change the edge, feather it. Here I'm going to feather it extremely. I'm going to move the edges in closer. And I'm going to do adjustment layers for just that. Determine whether I need to lighten it up
Nice.
or even accentuate the shadow. See what I did there is add contrast.
Okay. Once
And I
again,
changed the opacity.
which selection tool did you use to create that section?
Again, the quick up here is fourth tool down.
Quick selection tool. Okay.
Quick objects, quick selection tool is the second one down. Okay. But what it did was I kept it dark, but I added definition to it. And then the last thing I do, of course, is I look at it 100%. I scan, I see where there's artifacts. Here there are artifacts left over from the copying. There's similar things in here. A rock that's been copied twice, and I want to get rid of that. I don't want somebody to look at this and go, well, all he did was copy this. I don't want photographers who see my photos in the field to recognize what I did. See,
Okay.
there's two lines here that are kind of similar, so I'll
Yeah.
get rid of one of them. A couple too many stones that are similar, get rid of those, and then I scan up. I don't like things that detract from the picture. So things that are obvious, they just detract, and I get rid of them.
And you're using this Band-Aid tool over in the left?
Yep. And there's a cow patty,
Yeah.
cow patty.
Outstanding.
And I go through and I'll check the sky for dust spots on my sensor. And then I move it over to the right. And then I come back down. I'm careful to look for things. I don't want to delete Marilyn Monroe's mole, right?
Yeah.
Some of the defects, so to speak, are, make the image. See here, I don't like these cow patties. They don't add anything. So I'm going to grab my clone tool and extend this line.
Yeah.
I'm going to sample here, go there. I'm going to grab here on this line, grab down. And now it's a little too light in those areas. So I'm going to
I
add more
see how you've
gray.
done that. But as for me, I would have left that, hoping that someone would ask, what is that? Because it adds a little bit of genuineness to this image.
But again, that's and you understand that's artist choice, right?
Okay.
Um, I have a lot of my customers in particular, right? are from the city, and they'll never buy an image that has cow shit in it. They just won't. The
Call
ones
it a
the
flaw.
ones in Montana, my customers will all day long. So I just kind of meet them in the middle and take out most of the cow patties, the ones that
Okay.
are most obvious. Um, there, cow patty's gone. But anyhow, you get the point of just what I'm doing there.
Yes.
There's no need to open up the shadows here, there, and I would consider the image done. Now the difference is between this fit screen, zoom out a little bit, and file open.
Yeah. Yeah. Dramatic.
You don't need this one anymore. Why didn't that open? Because I hit done instead of open.
Okay.
So
I
there's
need to,
that's the original, and here's where we are now.
yeah, and I really like yours. Okay.
Now
Let's go back to
sharpening.
let's go back.
Just
Okay. Let's
just so
go
you
back to
understand.
yours.
What's that?
Okay. What I want to know is initially you had the image up and you had say my image, and you went and we're going to concern ourselves with exposure. And then you move the exposure so as to emphasize the foreground and let the sky be damned. And then later on, you exposed the image for the sky, and then you blended the two.
Correct.
Okay. In steps A, B, C, and D, but not to go as far down as M, how did you do that? And you don't have to show me here. Just tell me because I'm taking notes.
Well, like
We have an image and we
what
make
what you're doing is okay. This is a system that it took me years to kind of understand, and I'm not going to give all the history. We don't need to get into that, but understand that Ansel Adams was doing this in an analog studio
yeah,
long
yeah,
before there was Photoshop, and he recognized that when he exposed a photograph, that your sky was a different exposure value using a light meter than what it was, say, in the shade
okay,
or on the bark or in the leaves or in the grass. I mean, you can, and so he called those zones.
all right,
So what I was doing simply was we affected three zones on this image. One being the sky, two being basically the rest of the image. Although I could have easily considered the ground here, the foreground, a different one, but we didn't go that deep into it. And I exposed this area here as a different zone.
okay,
So what you do is you go in there and you just use your Adobe Camera Raw
yeah,
filter, Adobe Camera Raw, and you adjust it specifically for the sky. You don't pay attention to anything else but the sky.
okay, okay. That I got.
Then
What I
you
want to
save
know is
it.
how did you blend them?
Okay, then you do the second one,
Okay,
and then you highlight. It doesn't matter which ones you move. You copy one layer from one of the two images you created. You create a layer in the second one and you paste it. So you have two layers. One is the sky image and one is the foreground image.
and then you
And then you
created a
select,
blank layer,
I'm sorry.
and you created an empty layer or a blank layer.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's what you copied into.
Yep.
Okay,
And then you have to select the pixels that you want to delete. Doesn't matter which ones they are. You grab the ones that are easier to grab with your magic wand. It's always easier to grab the sky with a magic wand than it is to hunt and find pixels in this mess. So I always grab the sky. It goes quicker. And then I fine tune the edge to make sure I got everything copied correctly, and I soften it just a little bit so it blends together better. If it's a hard line, sometimes it can look weird, but I soften the edges a little bit so it would blend better. And then I deleted the pixels, and then I flattened it to create a whole brand new image.
Okay, now are you going to go in and do some sharpening or some denoise yet?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to do now.
Okay,
This is
good.
called, I'm going to copy the layer. Say I'm going to use this for a print, okay, to hang on the wall. I'm going to do a
All
16
right.
by 24 print. So I duplicated my layer. This is called the high pass method. This is by far the best, in my opinion, the best method of sharpening that's available to you. So you go to filter and you go to other and you select high pass.
Whoa. We went to filter. Go back again.
Filter,
Filter,
other,
other,
high pass.
other,
And click enter.
high pass. Never heard of this. Okay, keep going.
Now you're going to find a place with detail. I mean, if it was a sky, you wouldn't see this area so much. Basically, this is a 50% gray layer that shows, it's hard to explain, so I won't. But you want to go someplace where you have some detail. And you're going to move this slider to the right until you start to see halo effect. We're looking at 100% here. So I'm going to move this to the right. It's not going to take much. And see,
Okay.
there's too much. I wish, let me take this to the top. Uh, there's already a little bit of halo here. So we're going to take it down. That's too much. It's good. So you can just barely start to see a halo.
Mhm.
Just barely. And that's not because of this method. There already was a bit of a halo up there for some reason anyhow. So we're going to go there. Now we click OK. Now you really can't see anything there, but if you zoom in close, you'll see that the pixels are still colored differently. So here's the beauty of this system then. You go down to here, which is the blending style. So you're blending
Yes.
this layer with this one, and you're going to blend it to overlay.
Blend to overlay.
Okay.
No.
So now let's zoom in. If I turn it off, I don't know if you can tell on yours. It's harder sometimes to see this, when you're going through the link, but that's soft, and this is turned on where it's sharper.
Yeah.
Look at the grain here on this wood. You'll see it's much sharper. That's off. Now it's on.
Okay.
Let's go down here. It's off, and it's on. So practice this at home yourself. You'll see the stark difference.
Okay.
Now, you don't want to have too much sharpening, right? Because it looks a little hokey. But let's say this wasn't enough. You just duplicate this layer and add it on top, and it makes it even sharper.
Okay.
And then
You duplicated and you just put one on top of the other.
yeah, but that happens very little.
All right.
That's only when you have a really soft image. Here, we don't. So I'm going to leave it here. Now, what you can do with this method, you can't with others, is you can adjust the opacity. So say it's too much sharpening when you do this, you can dial
Oh.
it back. You can move it forward, but here's the best part. The one place where you always see noise that you don't need it is your sky, right? I mean, there's no point to having much definition or definition is different. There's not much point to having sharp sky. It just induces noise.
Okay.
So what you can do with, and by the way, that also includes the skin on a face, right? I mean, skin should be smooth. So I'm
Okay.
going to go through here and I'm going to grab the sky. And I'm going to subtract this ball
Okay.
and whatever else. But we're good. And I had to go down here to grab it. Up here, this won't recognize. That tool doesn't work on this layer. You have to go down here to grab it.
All right.
Now I'm going to fill this layer, edit fill, with 50% gray.
Ah.
And now I took out any sharpening that was applied to the sky. So this
Okay.
stays soft. Or you can use a paintbrush at 50% gray, which is what we got there, and I can paint out sharpening where I don't need it and remove it.
Okay.
That's what makes this, because you can selectively apply sharpening where you need it. And then you flatten it, and then you're ready to go. Your image is now hold on a second. Take care of these. Why this isn't working all of a sudden. Come on. That's weird. Oh, because I have it still didn't do selective. So yeah, that's how you sharpen an image. Now, again, as I said before, you want to sharpen it a little bit more for print than you would for online.
Okay.
And then I would say the image is done.
Okay.
So now I'm going to go back and save it as, I'm just going to click it on top of the first layer that I saved, since we don't need it anymore, and save it there. This is my first edit. If it's got a 2 on here, it means I re-edited it for some reason.
All right.
I always save it as a TIFF file.
Okay, let me tell you about my environment here, because yours is dramatically more sophisticated than mine. I make images.
What do you mean by I'm using the same software you are?
But you do it for a different motive. And many times you are building a piano, and rarely am I. So I use my stuff. Okay, in your audience, you have people who are professionals that have a professional eye. Capiche? Okay, in my environment, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king. So the people that look upon my photography have taken photographs mostly with their phone. I don't make things for print, but I'd like to get to that level. I use I have things printed, and I put things on my wall, and I put things on some friends' walls as gifts, Christmas, and so on. That's really my output motive. But this is teaching me some things that I can do to make them better without having to spend a lot of money.
Right. Any money, really.
So again,
you don't have to spend any money.
yeah.
Let me demonstrate you what this means. Why this is important. Now we start getting a little bit of theory. Your photography, in my opinion, is 50% what you do in your camera and 50% what you do in the digital darkroom. And that's how you have to look at it. You're not editing a photograph, you're exposing it. You're developing an image. And that's the way. Have you ever worked in an analog darkroom, by the way?
I have.
Okay,
I took a class at a local junior college in black and white photography as fine art. And then and it was interesting. That's where I got into the stuff about, dodge and burn like Ansel Adams did.
exactly. So that's how you have to look at it.
Yeah.
And Ansel Adams prints that you see were done through heavy manipulation in a darkroom. Heavy. I can't even stress that enough. People would be shocked how much time he spent in the darkroom creating a master negative from which he made prints from.
Mm-hmm.
And they'd probably be equally shocked if they saw the original negative. I almost guarantee it. So the point is that you evolve in everything. You evolve with your camera, and you evolve in your digital darkroom. And this is how to highlight this. This is a photograph that was so popular of mine for, I guess, I don't know, years. It's still a big seller of mine. I was out in the middle of Indian country, not far from where you were, Fort Belknap, and they have a herd of buffalo on their reservation that are basically held in captivity. There's a fence, but they roam on the plains, but they're not free like they are as much as they are in Yellowstone or the way the ones are up in Canada. And all the reservations in Montana are like this. And when they round them up to inoculate them and separate some from the herd, and I'm there and I have my camera, and these come dashing. What you don't see is off to the right is a corral, and they come flying by, and I make this photograph. And I had people all over the world license this photograph for purposes, but make prints because it demonstrated the plains. But it was still an imperfect image, but it's the one that I got, and it's the one that people liked. So this was in 2011, I believe. Yep, November 2011. Then I said, that this image is imperfect. I have developed far better digital darkroom techniques, and so I pulled up that image in the digital darkroom, and I decided I'm going to redevelop it. So now we're going to go to November 9th, 2011. And this is what I did with Photoshop.
Okay.
Look at the detail here.
Yeah. The
How
texture.
much
Yeah.
more detail there is in an
Look at his eye.
animal.
You enlightened his eyes, their eyes.
Yes, but look at how muddled this is, like mud.
Yeah.
This is so, there's no detail, no texture, no nothing. And the sky is still overexposed, but it's the one that I liked the best at the time, whatever. But it was just a poorly edited photograph because, well, at the time it was good editing, but for my skill level. But since then, I've been able to achieve this.
Yeah.
And it's so much better. And this one sells better now as a result. I added more texture to the grass, and I cleaned it up so that there was an eye at these ones had eyes, but I added an eye here so because the eyes are very important. I sharpened up the hooves a little bit so that it looked like I was more in focus with my camera than I really was. I wanted to show the distance because I wanted people to see that this is the plains, which is where these beasts live, and it just was a much better photograph. So what it also does is when I arrived in Montana, every off season I go through my digital negatives, and I try to see if there's photos that need editing, and I'll work on them, see if I missed them the first time when I was grading them, and then you get an image like this. And this is not a perfect image by any stretch of the imagination,
But
but
it's
it was like
pretty.
years later, right, where I was going through all my digital negatives, and which are mostly undeveloped. And I found this image. I'm like, well, I'm going to give this a shot in editing. And it just made the grass was green, but there was just something about it I didn't like. And I cleaned up some stuff, and I, fixed it up and stuff, and I came out with this. This image that's sat in my camera, my hard drive for 5 years or more. Once I got it out in the open, I've made thousands of dollars on this image through stock photography and prints sales. I still don't like this creek over here in the corner. I could photograph this out here, but I think I tried once and it just looks kind of hokey, so I just left it in there. I hate that this creek is here. I wish this was just a solid wall of green and cattle. But you find things that you skipped over
Yeah.
years ago that but because your editing techniques have improved so much, you can make something out of them. So that's the other benefit of continually upgrading your editing techniques, is because you'll always find a place for them. You could spend learning one thing every day about Photoshop, and in your lifetime you'll never get to the end of it.
Oh, I yes, I can agree with that. I'm going to need to move on, but before I do, I wanted to share a couple of things. I sent to you a thing about an advertisement for that summit workshop in Jackson.
Yes.
I attended that. And it comes to mind here where um, if one of your business objectives is to get to where you can invite and can provide photography tours to people, one of your competitors, one of your larger competitors would be Summit. And their objective is to let me put you in front of some elk. Let me put you in front of some moose or whatever the hell it is, in this case at Jackson. And then you go at it. And then at the end of the day, we're going to spend not very much time at all in doing what you did with me. I think your strength is, especially since in your environment, your range, your geographic range, you're not going to be able to take people to, in the course of 3 or 4 or 5 days, 15 different places. So if you were to focus on taking them to something that would be really cool beans, something out where they could shoot, for example, cowboys or something like that. But what they don't know, and they don't know it yet, is what you did with this defringe, what you did with that Band-Aid tour, the things that they've already got the capabilities within their computer, but they never asked themselves the question, what the hell does that do? I think your potential niche is to sell. I'll show you how to make your photographs better.
Well, I have to tell you that the way we planned to do it was similar to what you described from the standpoint. It's not quite exactly that, but what we wanted to do was, your day is broken up into pieces when you're a photographer. The mornings are great for shooting. The middle of the day sucks. The end of the day is great. And then your evening, you can either catch up in your sleep, or you brought up the idea, which I never thought of, go shoot something else, like do some nighttime photography.
Yeah.
I took that as a something that we talked about last time. During the middle of the day, that was the time that I planned on, looking at everybody's photographs, grading them and talking about how I would do things differently, and get conversations going in the room with the participants, and then also spend time on editing them and training them about my editing techniques. That was always part of the plan. So, it makes for a long day, but I mean, these people are paying good money, right?
Right.
Um, it's an option if they want to. If what I'm presenting to them is stuff they already know, well, they can go to the room and take a nap. I don't have a problem with that. But there are some there that are eager to learn, and they want to mop up every ounce of time that's there, because they only maybe get to do that once in a lifetime or once a year, depending on their budget.
Right.
And it's our job to not sleep, and make the customer's experience as fruitful as possible. So I mean, what you're describing is something that's definitely in the plan. Now I would argue that, I'm not really arguing, but I don't know if I can find this quickly, but I'll show you what we had planned for. Thousands of miles, Jesus Christ, city. I don't know if this is the one. Maybe it is. Okay. So we've kind of laid out some of the spots, where we would do some tours and stuff like that. Now, you have been to Cleveland, right? Um, and the weather was an issue there. And I know you. I mean, when I talked to you originally on those few times on the phone ahead of time, I had a feel that you wanted to get a slice of Montana, but because of the weather and stuff, and how they changed their branding schedule up there, that's why we spent more time going to the south, and trying to fill up your camera with as many experiences as possible. But the goal is to offer a cowboy country tour. And as you were going through Cleveland, this ranch you were over here on this ranch. This is the Pancrat's Ranch. This is
Okay.
downtown Cleveland, which used to boast the world's shortest parade. They don't do that anymore. Literally, they did. The parade started at the school and it ended here. And everybody would and all the area people would line up on these two spots, and they call it the world's shortest parade, which I would bring back as part of the photo tour. I've already talked to the ranchers out this way. You also have a rodeo arena, and you also have this building here, which is used for as a hunting lodge, and we would use it for our photo tours. So we would keep people closer.
Yeah.
Everybody would be holed up in this ranch. It would be authentic. You'd smell the cow shit, but I think that's what people want. They don't necessarily need the antiseptic hotel rooms. You kind of express that with the bar, right? But we want to do a little bit of upkeep on this to get this going. And then you were only traveling to this ranch and one over on the other side of McGann Butte and one down here by Black Butte and one down here by Birdtail Butte. And you're staying within 20 miles in every direction. And then, of course, over here is the Quarter Horse Ranch as well. And everybody would be based here out of Cleveland with a cell phone tower just up the road over here around the bend that provides good cell phone and internet. And there is internet already in the building because this building here is the fiber optic hut for the internet. So everything we can have is right here in Cleveland. The one thing we don't have is a bar, and we don't have a restaurant. So we would have to have, you know, certain foods and stuff catered in, which is fine because the guy who owns this ranch here, the Mitchells. I don't know. Did you meet Doug Mitchell out there then, like I told you?
Okay. Was this where we had the branding?
Yeah.
Yeah, I met him.
I'm not sure if he still does it, but he's like the caterer for all the weddings in Blaine County too. He does, the big barbecue feed and brisket and stuff.
Oh, so I think that people, from what I have seen, the notion of having, let's say, a genuine cowboy dinner,
right.
where you've got, you're out with a big ass a wrought iron skillet, and you're cooking some pretty decent food, but you're doing it largely outdoors.
Right.
As long as you've got some kind of tent or coverage. But I think they like that. Now, if this guy is also licensed at the branding, there was a bunch of Coors beer. There would be no pretense that we're going to set up, Lutece and be able to make shaken martinis. But if we could have beer and wine, that would be fine. I would encourage everyone to stay away from spirits because people get drunk and stupid. But it's less likely if they just do it with beer and wine.
I think you notice at those events through the day that nobody's getting drunk. It's just they have like one beer during the break, and they do drink. They start a little early, based on my experience. Most brandings will start at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and they got a break at 10 a.m. and then there'll be a few beers you'll hear popped open at that time, and then there's a lunch break and somebody will pop open a beer there, and then when they sit down to break bread after the branding, they'll pop a few beers. Now,
I wasn't talking about the branding. I was talking about, how many weeks in a row do they have brandings?
Oh, that goes on for an entire month and a half almost.
Okay. If that is the case, then I would focus my tour about cowboys, horseshit, and branding, and make sure that you're upwind, when that cow gets branded.
Yeah.
But the whole thing is, we're going to give you a chance to get some fabulous photography in about 30 hours. And the rest of our time is going to be how to make those pictures you took.
Right. Right.
Yeah, I see. When I was with Summit, we went all over the damn place, and it was fun. But what I didn't get, and what I had asked for, was I'd like someone to sit down with me and show me how to use Photoshop. and they never did that. So
No,
that's why I haven't gone
we would
back.
be heavy on the we would, I mean, I must say heavy. We want to give you an experience, but especially during those the middle of the day, you get less good photographs. So that's a good time to,
That's the
break
time
some
to have
bread.
class. A good time to have
Exactly, and
class.
talk, shop, and then till the evening starts up and we can do shoots again. But there's all
Okay.
kinds of things around here that we can stage. Um, and then just up the road, what you don't know, oh, I gotta train the map here again. Then we would do an Indian country tour. Here, the Nez Perce historical at this location is it's historical. It was a big battle between the U.S. Army and the Indians and stuff like that from the Nez Perce tribe, which is from out west. It's not from here, but their final stand was at this location, and we would do a powwow here out in the open plains with Indians that I hire from the Fort Belknap Indian Reservation. And we would also set up teepees for people to spend the night. And then there would be, food that we would feed people with, native, not entirely, right? But we would feed some, native delicacies like bison burgers.
Now,
Um,
wait a minute. Native delicacies. Those are two words rarely found in the same sentence.
Well,
Um,
it would be what's the term they use? I know what you mean. I mean, you're in Colorado, so you know exactly what I mean. But there are some cookbooks I've stumbled across through different tribal regions that they do have stuff that with a little chef's care you can turn into a delicacy. Um,
okay,
it's
I don't need to get really specific
we're
at
not
this
talking
very early stage, but
fry bread
people
tacos.
people that are going to go up on these things are going to be thinking photography and not culinary.
No, but we still have to feed them.
You don't have to feed them. Hey, while we're here, we can feed them stuff that they already know and enjoy, along with a Coors beer.
Yeah, I understand that, but in the same token, it isn't like I'm close to anything of substance, so I might as well feed them something of interest. You know what I
Well,
mean?
have a
So,
way of testing that product. Okay. What
but
I
then
want
real quick,
to
I'll just go. We won't go into detail on these, but right out of the gate in the first year, we want to do the cowboy tour, we want to do the Indian country tour, and we want to do this one would be in the fall. Is a cattle drive. There's a cattle drive that comes from the north over the course of 3 days, and then it comes through Chinook, and they run the cattle right through town, and then they end up at the Gordon Ranch south of town.
that would be
And
interesting.
the addition there would be there's actually a guy who's called a chuck wagon. He has a hooded trailer and horses that he follows the cowboys as they move the cattle, and they'll stop for a break, and he cooks them up breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Um, and that's and you wouldn't be in a horse. We might arrange that later, but you'd be in trucks following along the road as they move the
Yeah.
cattle south
Sag
uh,
wagon.
towards right, exactly. And there would be a
Okay.
few others in here, like there's the elk. We want to do this called the Montana wildlife tour. Here I can guarantee you elk in September, and we can guarantee you groundhogs and ferrets and all kinds of other wildlife during that time of year. And there's a few other ones we have built. These are long term. These aren't like in year one. We have 5 that we want to launch in year one. So
How do I get my hands on this video so I can go back and redo my notes?
when we get done, it'll automatically download it to my computer, and then I will upload it to my YouTube channel, which will be private. And I'll send you the link, and it'll be there in perpetuity.
Very good. Okay, I got to run. I've got a wife that's a little bit upset with me because there's some work going on around this house and I'm not involved in it.
I understand, sir.
So I'm
If
gonna okay
if you
if
need help with anything else on the editing
well
front, let me
your
know.
name is going to be used in vain here in about 3 minutes because it wasn't my fault, Deborah.
Okay,
This
good.
was Todd Classy's
Tell her
fault.
tell her Todd apologizes.
Yeah,
All
okay.
right.
Thank you so much. I'm going to sign off, and you're going to send me a link how I can see this.
Yes.
I'm impressed. I had a good time. Now I am there's a learning curve here that's kind of steep that I can get little bit by little, I can work on it, but this stuff is not intuitive, but I go over things again and again. Todd, when I do a YouTube a session, I have the computer, my old computer that has the video of YouTube, and my own computer here that has my images on it, so I can play it, stop it, do my stuff, play it, stop it, and so on, instead of attempting to memorize the things and do it from notes. So that's how I learn.
Well, you should do it like 5 photos in a row, and then
Okay.
it will be committed to memory then.
Okay. All right. Listen, thank you so much. I look forward to hearing from you again, and we'll chat.
Very good, sir. Good talking to you again, and I'll get you that link to you as soon as it downloads the video.
Very good. Bye bye.
All right. Thank you.